Probably next Thursday night, at the time you're watching Michigan Outdoors, you'll be able to hear some frogs and maybe toads, some different critters in the marshes, talking to us like we did last Thursday night. But Dean Primo, you're from the herpetology department at MSU. With the snow we've had, I don't think we're going to have too many marsh sounds this evening, do you?
No, I don't think so. They're underwater right now.
Okay, but let's talk a little bit. We were ready in case the sounds were here, but we do have some slides of some little frogs, the first ones that emerge in the marshes. Why don't you tell us about what's out there and what we can hear maybe in the next few days?
Well, last week when the weather was warm, we started to hear frogs calling, and the one that you see there on the screen is the wood frog, and he's one of the earlier frogs to come out in the springtime. And the sounds that they make we describe kind of as a chuckling noise. And there'll be a few of them together in a pond.
Mm-hmm. And those, how big are those?
Those are about a half-inch long. They're a rather small frog.
Oh, a tiny frog. Now, what about another type that's common?
Well, the other common early spring frogs would be the western coarse frog. These guys have little stripes on their back. They're also small frogs.
Now, that sound is familiar.
Yes, we like to describe that sound as rubbing your fingers over a plastic comb. A breep sound. And they are in the roadside ditches and in the woodland ponds at this time of year, and they'll call as soon as the weather warms up again.
Now, why are these frogs calling at this time of year? Is this strictly for mating, to attract females?
For the most part, yes.
So it's the males that do the calling?
It's only the males that are calling, and they are attracting females to the pond. They'll deposit their eggs in the pond, the tadpoles will grow up, and then the little frogs will go back to the woods at the end of the summer.
Okay, now that comb sound was the woodland coarse frog.
Coarse frog.
Western coarse frog.
Correct.
Now the spring peeper that everyone...
That's another real familiar sound. A single peeping note, very piercing, and a large chorus of them will sound deafening if you're very near it. And these also are early breeders. At this time of year, they're ready to go as soon as the weather moves up to around 40 degrees.
Now, will these little frogs, these little peepers, of course, they're only about a half-inch long, too.
Or smaller.
Will they be around all summer?
Yes, you could run across them on wet mornings in the woods during most of the summer. They're a type of tree frog, and you can run across them right up until fall.
Okay, well, let's see what you have in the sack here. You have a larger frog, something of larger size that fishermen will see in the water.
That's correct.
You'll see along the edge of a pond. Kids like to catch them, take them home.
This is called the leopard frog, and it is one that fishermen use sometimes for fishing for largemouth, smallmouth bass, and so on. And it's out in the ponds now, too.
Okay, the sound of a leopard frog is...
We like to describe that as taking a wet balloon and rubbing your fingers across it, making that kind of a squeaky sound, sometimes a little lower sound than that. But they'll be calling again a little later than the others, but they move to the ponds fairly early.
Okay, what function do frogs and all these little peepers, what function do they have in nature?
Well, there are very many of them, and they play an important role in the food chain. They are eaten by mammals, nocturnal mammals, and birds, and therefore are quite useful in that way.
Okay, well, that's our frogs that are out at this time of year, if we can just get rid of this darn snow. But look at what we have here. This is one of the ugliest creatures going, aside from maybe a mud puppy. But this is a salamander, and something that you might find in a window well around your home at this time of year. Dean, would you explain why?
Well, at this time of year, these salamanders are moving to the ponds again to breed, and they move on rainy nights. And we also get a lot of calls in our office, people saying we've got several of these in our window well or have moved into a hole. They just fall in that as they're walking to the ponds.
Okay, and these are amphibians, and they have to be kept damp. School kids oftentimes like to pick these up and take them home, put them in an aquarium. If they do that, what should they feed them?
These eat worms and small insects in the wild. In captivity, if you can collect worms, it's nice, but liver and so on will do in the wintertime.
Okay, well, these are salamanders. We've talked about frogs. These are things that are coming out right now, which we haven't heard for some time in Michigan Outdoors. Thanks a lot, Dean. We're going to have you back to talk about snakes in about a month or so.
Very well.
And we're